Krásny deň, vítajte pri sledovaní ďalšieho rozhovoru z cyklu Na ceste. Aj tento rozhovor, ako ostatné, je natočený v karavane, akorát úvod natáčam tiež na ceste a možno spoznávate Piazza Navona v Ríme. V tomto rozhovore mám špeciálneho hostia. Špeciálny preto, lebo možno ste sa už stretli s niekým, kto vyrastol na Slovensku a následne odišiel do sveta a tam vlastne prerazil s niečím. Yehuda Tagar precestoval svet, pôsobil v rôznych krajinách, až nakoniec zakotvil tu na Slovensku, kde je zakladateľom Školy Empatie. Viac o ňom si môžete prečítať. Dole v popise sú tam na ňo aj linky. A v dnešnom rozhovore sa rozprávame samozrejme aj o empatii, ale trošku iné ponímanie empatie ako takej, prečo je to dôležité, čo vlastne nám to môže priniesť. Ale nielen to, prešli sme... Yehuda má naozaj široký záber a hlboké vedomosti, také hlboké poznanie, takže sme sa rozprávali o tom, ako vlastne v týchto divokých časoch môže každý z nás prispieť takej tej transformácii nás ako ľudstva. Celý rozhovor je v angličtine, takže môžete si zapnúť titulky. Samozrejme, že pokiaľ vstúpite do niektorého z kurzov Školy Empatie, je to aj s prekladom, ale tento rozhovor som neprekladala, sú tam titulky. Pokiaľ ste sa so mňou ešte nestretli, moje meno je Slavomíra Harcegová, som autorka projektu Umenie žiť, sprevádzam ľudí 12-mesačnou premenou na ceste k lepšiemu životu. A teraz už nech sa páči k rozhovoru. Hello Yehuda, welcome in my camper van.
Slavomíra.
Yes, I'm so excited to have a conversation with you today because, you know, you lived in so many countries, and can you name every country you lived in?
I was born in Israel to Slavonic parents, Ukrainian and Bulgarian.
Oh,
But I was brought up in Israeli, Jewish, Slavonic culture, but not religious. My families were not religious, but the creators of Israel. But my adult education is mainly Central European, German culture, Russian culture, Slavonic culture. And in my mid-20s, I started to travel. I was a social worker and community organizer in many initiatives in Israel, but I went to England to study education, to create the first new alternative school in Israel, a Waldorf school, but I never came back. I went to Emerson College in England and I discovered what really changed me and what really transformed me, because I needed it at that point, went through crisis. I discovered theater. I discovered theater and drama is the most powerful tool of transformation for me. But I was not interested in theater for entertainment and just fun, but transformation. And in theater I had a revelation. I realized that human empathy was born in theater. Empathy was born in theater.
That's interesting point of view.
Not in psychology. But the name empathy only came in 1951. But the development of it started in the 5th century before Christ, BC, in ancient Greece, when they established theater. When one person represents another person to a third person. And in order for me to represent you on a stage in a convincing way, I have to take me as I am, my body, soul, spirit, memories, character, is raw material to shape out of it you in a convincing way to somebody else. This magnetized me. I can be everyone. And my admired playwright is, of course, Shakespeare, was in England. And in his time, men were acting women too. There were no women allowed on the stage. So the tradition is everyone can be everyone. And women sometimes pretend to be men to be on the stage, and they were acting men. So there was a statement from the beginning, everybody can be everybody. And it took 2,500 years for this to become a psychological phenomenon. And suddenly, if you don't have empathy, you're half human. Like the definition of psychopath is somebody without empathy. But you know, the word empathy is only from 1951. There was no, if you look at 1950 worldwide in dictionaries, including Oxford and Cambridge, there is no empathy. It was invented in 1951 because we needed it. But the roots of it developed in theater. So in theater, I developed real psychology, real transformation psychology, not so many concepts and statistics, but real tools of change. To be somebody else, I had to change. And I became a trainer of actors and a director. And I looked for my next teacher, and I found in Australia, in Sydney. So I went to Australia and continue my theatre training. And after a while, I realized what I really want in theatre, I have to create myself. So I completed my degrees in theatre and in counseling, and I did workshops of practical application of theatre. And then people came to me and said, what you do, we want you to help us to do. This was 1990. So I invented a training with people, with my students, developed together, how to train people to do what I do. And what I did, I helped people to look at themselves practically. Because we don't have organs for self-perception. We have eyes and ears and taste and everything for the outer world, and one sense for the body, and that's it. We are looking out. But in order to understand another person, you have to look in. And I cannot look into you if I don't look into me.
That's
the instrument to catch you, the instrument to understand you, I have to create with every person fresh. I have to find in me Slavomira to communicate to you in an effective way. So I have to change all the time. And I realize that this is so important for the future of humanity, for developing towards the community and society I'm interested in, that we would not leave these powerful tools for theater people, with about 5% of them. In other words, drama is too important to leave it for dramatists. I wanted to take something out of it for humanity. We can understand each other deeply. Somewhere inside of everyone, there's a potential organ for understanding everyone else. That's my revelation. It happened to me in 1981. It never changed. It just became deeper and deeper. But I knew it has to be done in a different way. I did theater, but most of theater is developed towards a certain cultural contribution. Live theater, very few people go to live theater. The movies took over. I understood why. Theater is not for professional actors only. It's for everybody. So I stayed on the stage, but I said goodbye to the audience. No passive audience. I have people who join me in this. We want to understand ourselves deeper, and we want to understand others deeper. And I had to test it. So I developed a process for deep empathy, starting from self-empathy. And in order to see myself, I have to change. And that change is required to understand you.
This is so important to understand each other in today's world, like full of conflicts, and we are so divided as a society. And how do you think this, what are we talking about, empathy and understand each other, can us create a better world, like create a peace? Because it's just unsustainable how we live
Well,
now.
I'm a historian too. And I have to say that conflicts were always here. I come from an ancient culture. I'm not a religious Jew, but this is my mythology. So we have a book written 3,000 years ago. Slavomira, there were always conflicts. It's not like we had paradise recently to return to. Nobody remember paradise. So I just want to say human conflicts were always there. But as we develop individually, we tolerate them less. It was completely normal to go to war between two tribes and two countries. All the way back to the Mahabharata in India 10,000 years ago, it's a history of war. It just becomes more and more destructive because we are supposed to grow over it. The process that cannot be stopped is the process of becoming more and more individualized. We are becoming more individualized than our parents, who are more individualized than their parents. We are moving slowly from group identity to individual identity, and there is no stopping of that. And as a result of each one of us become more self, more who I am, which we don't know, but we are searching for it, we become more and more complicated. And also we become more and more rebellious against the past, because there's not much to be nostalgic about. And nobody that I meet, hardly anybody, wants to raise their children the way their parents raised them. And hardly anybody wants to develop intimate relationship the way their parents did. So we are all dissidents. There is no past to say, oh, it was so wonderful. There's nothing to be nostalgic about. And therefore to be conservative is to be regressive, because the nature of humanity is to grow and develop. In the tribes are always fighting each other. Let's be clear, the tribes were always fighting each other because there was instinctive understanding in the tribes. We are Germans, we are Russians, we are Magyars, we are Slovak, we are Czech, we are Hottentot, we are Eskimo. There was always tribes. And in the tribes, there was a spirit. There was the local spirit. We spoke the same language. We believed in the same gods. We had the same culture. There was rites of passage, what it is to be a man, what it is to be a woman, what it is to be a parent, who can be a leader, who is a warrior. This was all given. All this is falling apart. We cannot be guided by the groups anymore. But what shall we be guided by?
Exactly.
So we say goodbye to God, as Friedrich Nietzsche said, God is dead, don't you know, God is dead. What is replacing? Das Übermensch, the higher dimension of the individual, not of the nation. Nietzsche was not nationalist. He said individuals have to develop to the higher dimension of themselves. Back to the conflicts. In the past, the traditions, the customs, the habits, the language, the collective spirit held us together. And more we have to replace it with individual awareness and with individual consciousness. In the beginning, it's difficult and more conflicting because, as you can see, children grow into adolescence. No child become an adult without going through adolescence. And I had 4 boys going through adolescence. 3 of mine and another one of my partner. It is constant conflict because they want to be what is unique to me, but they don't know what it is. All they know is they're not children anymore, and they want to be like adults, but they don't want the responsibility of adults. So it's a war zone, and we have to be patient with them. But humanity altogether is in adolescence, because they can compare the development of one person to the whole of humanity. Generally speaking, we're not children anymore, but we're not adults anymore. I had a session with a young woman yesterday, and all her life she attracted to men who are at least 15 to 20 years older than her, all the way from 15. I said, this is interesting. You're not interested in people your age? She said, I don't want boys, I want men. But the problem is, even in mature age, people who think they're men, they're still boys. So she's looking for the man who is not a boy. Good luck for her. There's not many of them, according to the women. We are on the way to take real responsibility individually for our life. So the conflicts are now more inside the family, more inside the tribes, not between two tribes, but inside, because the conflicts are inside the individual. Those who want us to go back to fighting between nations, like what happens now between Ukraine and Russia, these are the people who hold us back in regression. They want to take us back to the 19th century. They want to take us back to the First and Second World War and the Cold War. These are the anti-development people. They don't want us to be individuals. They want us to be parts of a machine. You know, Stalin called people cogs in a machine. It was all a machine for him. One person in charge. We now see in Russia a regression to Stalinism. You know, people are just, doesn't matter how many people die. This is losing. Totalitarianism is not working economically, it's not working politically, it's not working. So we are living now in a time of the tribes controlled by one person are collapsing everywhere. Russia is collapsing and next China will collapse because it doesn't work anymore. What works is meeting between people. And when we have a meeting between people and some kind of standard of solving problems together, it's easy to be cynical about democracy, but it's a great achievement and it's quite new. And those nations and those societies who create a dialogue in which everybody is respected, these are the leading economies, the leading technologies, the winning side. They have lots of problems, and materialism is the biggest sickness. But at least people are talking and everybody has a say. So I'm happy to be in one of those countries. I probably couldn't live here 30 years ago, but I'm happy to be here now. So the conflicts are moving to the inside now. That's where they belong. We have to struggle with ourselves. Last bit of answer to your question about conflicts. In 1948, there was a war in India. They wanted freedom from the British control. The leader was Gandhi. Then it split into two, Gandhi and Zina, and Pakistan separate from India, which was a tragedy. But at one point there was a fighting between Muslims and Hindu in Calcutta. And Gandhi was on the roof of a building, starving. He was the leader, but he stopped eating, and everybody knew he's dying after 30 days in protest against the war. He said, "You're all Indians, Muslim, Hindu, Jews, Buddhists, I'm all of it. You will stop fighting." And he was on the roof and everybody knew Gandhi is dying because of us. And at one point he could hardly speak and he said, "What's happening down there?" And his aide, his assistant said, "The Muslims and the Hindu are still fighting each other." And he said, "Go and tell the fools that the fighting belong inside now." And I think we're doing all this fighting outside because we're afraid to do the fighting inside. What is the fighting inside? I am here to grow. I am here in this life to take the material, the raw material my parents gave me, my culture gave me, my karma gave me, and use out of it, use it for the next level of my development. Humanity doesn't develop as an abstract. Humanity develops because you develop and I develop. When we fail to do that, when we are afraid to do that, when we are afraid to look at ourselves and see, this part of me I like, this part of me I don't like, this I have to change, this I have to heal, and take responsibility for the inner jungle. When we fail to do that, when we fail to do our task in life, then we take frustration at others and blame anybody else. So the alternative to external conflict is internal struggle for transformation, because we have to change. We were born to change. It's our destiny. The whole universe is waiting for us to grow. So I don't see it just as problems to solve. Slavomir, I see it as development. Child develop. Adolescence goes through inner struggles. We are all in adolescence pretending to be adults.
Exactly. Yes, this is so interesting, this like bigger perspective
Yeah.
of this. But now let's like dive deeper, or let's come to individuals. What we can do, like each of us, how we can support this, like growing us as a humanity, you know, in growing individually. What we can do, what are the steps?
I know that the drive for change, the instinct, the impulse, the will to change lives in everyone. If it does not, I cannot help them from outside. You cannot inject development into anybody. All education now is self-education. I can encourage you, I can stimulate you, I can mirror you, I can hear you deeply. I cannot give you your desire for change. And without desire for change, there is no change. There is no automatic change. The only change is aging. But it doesn't make me wise just to become older. The only things that aging gives me is transition from black hair to white hair. That's it. The rest I have to do myself. So people have a drive for change. And if there wasn't inner drive for change, there's nothing I could do. We can support it. We can do deep empathy and find it. So if you come and ask me for help, I'm a counselor, coach, psychotherapist, psychosomatic therapist, consultant. Okay, that's what I do. That's what I teach. I did it in a few countries. Now I'm based in Slovakia. And I can tell you later why Slovakia. I'm happy here. I'm happy to stay here for the rest of my life. As a basis, I'm here not just for Slovakia, I'm in Slovakia for Europe. I believe in Europe as the future of humanity. Leadership does not exist in East or West now. It has to be found in the center. So I'm here, and I am supporting this change as a midwife. My profession is midwifery. I cannot give people babies. I've done it 3 times, it's enough. I deliver babies. A midwife delivers babies. But the midwife cannot deliver a baby if the baby is not there. So my basic answer for you, it's there. The desire, the commitment, the mission to change is there. Nietzsche got it right. Everybody has got eine Mensch und eine Übermensch. Everybody has got a status quo and a desire to develop it. And that's the new God, so to speak. That's why I say that God is dead. Let's find the one inside. He said human beings are potentially divine. Let us polish it. Let us find the diamond inside of the stone. So, I think in the same way that a woman giving birth, she needs support. Okay, maybe they can do it without support, but from ancient times, women have a midwife. It's an old wisdom. They don't need an obstetrician as much as a midwife. If I have to choose for my wife a hospital with an obstetrician or a very experienced doula, I'd prefer the doula at home with a telephone to hospital if something goes wrong, you know. So we are the doulas. And for me, everyone is pregnant. Even men with the next level of their development. Now, there's different processes how to deliver it. We have a process, we call it psychophonetics, a combination of verbal and non-verbal modes of communication. It's basically a method of midwifery. And every person is different. So our process of helping people to develop has to be 100% customized. It has to be designed by that person. So if I would give you now a psychophonetic session, I have to forget everything I know. And I know a fair bit. I've at least 30 years of experience in 21 countries. I have to let go of all of that and start from you. And then we build a bridge. Yeah, I've got all these mechanisms and processes and experience which I teach people, but we teach mostly by demonstration. I have to start from you. In psychophonetic sessions, we do nothing until there is a wish coming from the client. A wish has to be created first. That puts the client, the patient, in a position of director. Not just a problem, a wish. People come with problems. We don't act on them. We cultivate them into deep self-empathy. And then comes a wish from the spirit. And that becomes our job description. And then we have many processes to process and cultivate that wish. But my religion is the spirit is inside people, not outside. I am not non-religious. I just believe that everybody is a priest. I don't need to be a priest for other people. I need to be an encourager, brother, sister, skilled friend. And so I can tell you more about our tools, and of course there's many other methods and other tools, and I feel connected to many other ways of working. These whole front of us who are midwives in different ways, in different philosophies, and I'm not comparing, I leave it for others to compare. The work speaks for itself. But what is common to the people who are really helping is we are midwives. And this is not new. The principle of it is not new. It starts from Socrates. You know, he's the founder of philosophy 2,500 years ago. And he said, I know nothing. I'm just a midwife for what you know. And he is my hero. It's absolutely modern. But then it was for very special people. Now it is for everybody.
So now I wonder, so do you think that everyone can develop like this instrument for just like look within, like see inside? You know, you were talking about this, how we can perceive outside world, and if we need to look inside and know myself better, so how we can develop these skills. Is that possible to do that like individually, or do you think everyone needs this midwife for personal growth and development?
Not everybody needs a winner. With every skill, you can do it yourself, or you can do it more efficiently with support. If you need a website, you can take a book or download a book and start to learn how to build a website. Everybody can do that. You can download from the internet how to do anything. Or you can consult somebody whose profession it is to do websites. Same with marketing. You know, you can start and think, how do I find my people? Or speak to people whose profession it is to do that. The same with personal development. Of course you do it yourself. Your question was, can everybody do it? The answer is categorically yes, potentially. Everybody can teach oneself to read, to write, to do arithmetics, every branch of knowledge. You can do many PhDs just from the internet. So do we need teachers? Do we need pedagogues? Do we need lecturers? You can do it all yourself, or you can consult and still do it yourself, but with a skillful person who specializes in that. So I'm not saying everybody needs it. I'm just saying many people do. I do, and we need each other. We developed the capacity to be skilled friend on the threshold. To develop, you have to face thresholds. You can face it alone. You can give birth to a child alone. Or there can be somebody there to assist you, but the assistance must be temporary. If the assistance become permanent, you just become a part of the sickness. Our processes with people are short. We are not designed to stay there and you need me for the rest of your life. We are not that service. We are encouragers for personal leadership. So what we do in psychophonetics and methodical empathy is not traditional psychotherapy. We are not really therapists. We are consultant for you to become your own therapist. We encourage people to be the therapist. Therapy has to happen because we have old wounds and we have old defense mechanisms. We have old blocks. We have history with parents who were not angels. We have history with systems who are not human. By the time you come to adulthood, there's so much to recover from. Therapy is needed, but the time for one person doing therapy for the other is over, in my view. I can encourage you to be your own therapist. When you get it, you don't need me. So, we don't call ourselves psychotherapists in Slovakia, but consultant for personal development. It includes healing. Now, I can speak about how we do it, but I want to be clear. There's many other ways to do it. My real colleagues are not people who do exactly what I do. My real colleagues are people who do what they do, but with the same direction, which is the spirit lives in the human soul. And everyone has a potential to develop it. Also, everybody has got some musical capacity. Some develop it, some don't. For instance, I have a musical capacity. I've got absolute hearing, pitch, I could be a conductor, but I didn't develop it, so I'm not a musician. Everybody's got some mathematical capacities. Not everybody become a mathematician. Everybody has got some scientific capacity. Every children are little scientists. Some develop it and some don't. Everyone has a potential for personal development. Some do it, some fall asleep. But the difference between the potential for personal development and the potential to be a musician is, if you don't become a musician, it's a loss of culture and for your fulfillment. If you're supposed to be a musician. But if you don't do personal development, you become toxic. It's not just a question, can everybody do it? Yes, everybody can do it, and everybody has to do it just to be healthy. And not to do some personal development becomes more and more toxic and sick. It's not an option anymore not to process your life experience. Not to process your life experience becomes the same as not to process food. Now, what happened to us if we don't process yesterday's food? If you and I did not process last night's dinner, we would not be that well. If we didn't process it for 2 days, we would not meet today because we would be really unwell. After 3 days, we'll have to go to hospital. Experience becomes food. If we don't process it, we become sick. The food is human experience, 70% of which is relationship. If we don't process it, we become toxic, as we would be if we don't process physical food. That's new. In the past, it was okay to follow parents, to follow tradition. It's over. From the second, third decades of last century, there's nothing to follow. Nothing. Look at nations who follow the leader from even the beginning of 20th century. Look at people who followed somebody else. Where does it go? Where does Russia go now, following a leader with very limited perspective on humanity? Where does China go, following an absolute leader with his own perspective? These people could be very clever, but it's just one person. Following a leader was normal, was healthy. Not anymore.
So do you think that everyone needs to become his own leader?
Yes, categorically.
And how would it work in a society when
These
everyone
two
would be leader?
polar principles for being a society. One to be controlled from outside and one to be controlled from inside. We do work as a society. And the leading countries are those that trust individuals. The leading countries, leading economically, culturally, politically, socially, and technologically, are countries in which there's a social contract that everyone is equal in front of the law. Everybody vote, and let's not be cynical about this because you don't want to go back to times when you didn't. Everybody has a say. Everybody has to be consultant, and we work in consensus with constant dialogue and prologue between individuals. So it's already happening. What is the principle to bring us together? Contract. You and I agree what we do together. And you look at Western and Northern Europe, the richest countries are not countries with more oil or gas or gold or minerals. Take Finland. I don't know, 10 million people or something. They have no oil, no gas, no natural resources, no much aristocracy, quite flat. Scandinavia is quite flat. You know, they've got a king somewhere or something, but actually people are quite equal. They have a social contract that every baby will be protected. Doesn't matter how much money the parents earn. Really evolved country, and compared with Russia, with so many resources, enough oil and gas and minerals for the whole world, who is more developed? Who has more freedom? Who is more rich? If you develop it capita, per capita, Finland is top of the world with nothing but people who are living with each other. So the principle of society and the principle of being individual are not in contradiction. They decided to trust each other. Same in Switzerland. Same in Sweden, same in Norway. Same used to be in England, but they're destroying themselves now. We fought for that. We fought for human rights. We fought for the right of individuals to be considered equal. We fought for the equality of women. We fought for this more than 100 years. Places that achieved it are leading. You know, the Finnish government, these ministers around the table, the majority are women. The prime minister is a woman. Who is making now the decision to join NATO? The woman. Same. The prime minister of Sweden is a woman. I'm not saying all prime ministers have to be women, but the women are really reaching the potential in societies when individuals are respected. So respect and power for individuals is respect and power for women. It's the same thing. They are very successful when a society is based on a contract of individuals, not of the control of a strong man. And when countries are subject to the control of one man, they go backward. Backward!
So I would like to invite you to create a vision of a better society, what we can do, what we can start to do right now.
We have to start from ourselves. Gandhi was right. The wars belong somewhere, and they belong inside. We have to help people to look at themselves and find inside the bridge for others. So many social theories, ideologies, even religions try to start and build bridges and harmonies from outside, ideas about it. But when you have wonderful ideas, utopian ideas, without looking inside, one after the other, they become regressive. The evolutionary dissidents, innovators of yesterday become the autocrats of today. All revolutions end up with heads off, you know, because the revolutionaries, they look outside how to change society without looking how to change themselves. You know, Bertolt Brecht, the poet of communists, you know, from Eastern Germany, at the end of his life, he wrote different kind of poetry. And one line I remember, it was called direct poetry, like no decorative poetry, just straight. And one sentence I will never forget. And I studied Brecht in theater, and I admire him. Not his communism, but his dramatic skills. He really innovated theater. And he said, we who were striving for a world of good heart, forgot ourselves to have a good heart. That's Brecht at the end of a lifetime of dedication to socialism. In the Democratic Republic of East Germany, DDR, he gave up on this. He said it didn't work. We looked outside to create a good world. We forgot to look inside. Jung said, to be spiritual doesn't mean to imagine beautiful apparitions and have fantasies about a pure world. To become spiritual means facing your own demons. So that's where it starts. And this is scary. The biggest fear in the world is look inside. The biggest hatred in the world is directed at oneself. The biggest doubt in the world is self-doubt. We have to help people to face themselves. And deep inside, we find the universal human being. We don't have to create it by ideology. Our nature is that we are one family. We just forgot. And we cannot create it outside with self-ignorance. Self-ignorance is not on anymore. It's working less and less. So you can speak about empathy as ideology. No. I am the director of Školy Empatie in Slovakia. And for us, it's not ideology. For us, it's like building a table or building a house or digging a garden. It's something to do. I'm building a garden in my property in Bernalakovo, where there was never a garden before. I'm growing my own tomatoes and cucumbers and lettuce and chilies. I love chilies. It was not a garden before. I had to dig it 60 centimeters and fertilize it. Now things are growing. I am a raw material. Every human being is a piece of land that has not been cultivated, but something is expected of us. The society that you are hoping for is expected of us, but it doesn't fall from a tree. It has to be discovered in the depths of the soul.
So to wrap that up, what I understood from you were talking about is just we need to start to look inside, look within, and start with our good heart, become
And the opposite.
good people.
And the opposite. We have to look at the opposite of good heart. You see, if good heart was simply our nature, everything would be good. Who do you think produced the opposite of good heart? Who produced evil? Who produced destruction? Who produced hatred? We did. Human being did. We don't just have the pure and the beautiful inside Slavomira. We also have the opposite. Just to be realistic. It's not like human beings created beautiful things and somebody from Mars created weapons and deadly workplaces and destructive families and child abuse. We did it all. We are a mixture. And that's why we have to start inside. And that's why ideologies are so weak. Yes, it is deep in our nature to evolve. Evolution is not Darwinian anymore. Evolution is conscious. But we have to go through the opposites inside, not just with the dream of beautiful. And also looking inside, I cannot just do it physically. It's a whole process because we don't have a sense organ to look inside. Look at us. You know how I look now more than I do because you look at me, I don't look at me. We look out. We need to create consciously a mirror through which to look in. And inside, I don't just find me. Inside of me, the world lives. Inside, I find the world, not just me. Inside, I find you, not just me. Inside of human beings is a universe, not just my little skin encapsulated ego. When I really go inside, I find humanity. That's why I dedicate my life to this. This third option between going out, ignoring yourself, and going in, ignoring everybody else. This is primitive. This is digital. This is black and white. The whole rainbow in between. The world is inside of me. I can discover it. I am in the world. I will discover me through meeting you deeper. The I is not in or out. The I is inside out. And we cannot look inside with the guidance of some recorded meditation or some guru and some closed eyes mantra. We need to find more sophisticated ways to look out. I mean, people think that technologically, we need to develop new technologies every day. But psychologically, we try to do what our forefathers did 5,000 years ago, going back to indigenous cultures with all respect, who were created before there was individual I. It's new, baby. We are so primitive when it comes to self-awareness. And when you work with it, like I and my colleagues did for years, and you can see what is possible in healing oneself, in healing relationship, in going through crisis positively, in comparison to what is possible. Our human interaction, including man and woman interaction, is primitive. It breaks your heart to see the waste of human potential, because with little steps of self-awareness, relationship can change drastically. That's what we teach.
So that's empathy, to feel.
Empathy is a major word for it, but the ordinary, conventional understanding of empathy is very shallow. Most people don't see the difference between empathy and sympathy. Most people think that empathy is just being nice and kind and care for somebody. That's very shallow. No, empathy is like carving in granite. Empathy means looking at you from your own point of view. Can we do that? Most of us look at people from our point of view, think we know them. Even in relationship, even in intimate relationship. I work with couples a lot, and I show them that they know very little about each other, because all they know is what you are for me, and what I project at you, and what I want you to be, and what I don't want you to be, and what good you are to be, what not good you are to me, and do I like it or not. Kindergarten. What do we do to know the other from their point of view? That's empathy. It's hard work. Because I have to overcome the habit of egotism to do that. And I have to overcome the habit of being controlled by others to do that. What I'm saying is, empathy, the baby, it was only named 70 years ago. 71 to be precise. It's new. It's the last 3 seconds in evolution. But why was it created in the middle of 20th century? Because we needed it. Because to be guided by the groups, to be guided by following others, to be guided by traditions became so destructive. We just couldn't continue anymore. We needed to find another principle of social cohesion, because the traditional ones failed us and failed us and failed us. We came to the brink of total destruction of the earth in the 50s. Where do we go from there? Slaughter and destruction of millions of people on an industrial scale. How much worse can it be? And so we stopped. And so there must be another principle. That's where empathy was born. It's a baby. Do you know that there was no international law before the late 40s? There were some treaties. There were some laws of the sea, not obliging anybody. The first universal declaration of human rights and the first basis for international law was the Bill of Rights of the United Nations, 1947. First time we said, okay, let's have a contract. We cannot go into wars like this. Let's talk. The wars continue, but not on that scale. Let's stop shooting and talk. This happened approximately the same time as empathy was born. And now, half a century afterwards, suddenly, everyone's business becomes everyone's business. I haven't seen anything like that. I follow history for at least 50 years. Look, one country invade another and destroying culture and cities and denying the right to exist of another country. It is everyone's business. From Australia in the south to Norway in the north, from the whole United States to the eastern border, everybody says, just a moment. The Ukrainians are our brothers and sisters. What are you doing? And the Russians also are brothers and sisters. Why are you doing this in the family? Suddenly it's not acceptable anymore. Suddenly the assumptions of the strategy fall apart because the world supports the oppressor. Not enough. It didn't have to come to this at all. But the Russian people decided to have a dictator, and the whole intelligence, the whole huge intelligence and history and depth and culture of the Russian people is reduced to one person who is troubled personally. This cannot work. But the empathic response of the nations of the world surprised everybody. And you know what? It's not the governments. It's the people. The people are pushing politicians to do something about it everywhere. Germany was not passing weapons of war to any nation since the Second World War. We are not supporting aggression. They changed the policy drastically because of push from the people. The American people are pushing the government to support Ukraine everywhere. The British government was not doing enough. The people are pushing it. It's people saying, this is our brothers. The Slovak government couldn't do much about Slovak refugees if the Slovak people, family by family, did not open the doors and say, okay, we'll have them. What could the Slovak government do? Put them in stadiums or in shelters? No, it's families. Well, we adopted a Ukrainian family. Everybody with a spare room should do that. It's people-driven. It's just one example, and I know it is controversial and politicized. I'm just showing that's going on. Russia is losing the war because of world empathy. I know it's ugly and dirty and war, and I was a soldier myself, and I know what war is like, and it is always something everybody loses. But it's a test. How many families do we have? And more people say, one. Humanity is a family. And the planet is home. Can you please stop this kindergarten? So, it's happening. Slow, but it's happening. And society which will not be based on the principle of progressive empathy will lose. They will lose on the intelligence of people, limiting it all to one. They do ridiculous things when that happens. And you see it invading politics too. We start to prefer leaders who are empathetic. The last two presidents of Slovakia, they were chosen by the people because they're more empathetic, not because they have more money, not because they have more power. I mean, they didn't even want to be politicians. One was a philanthrope and Chapurova was a human rights lawyer. She just did it in desperation. Suddenly people liked her. Now the Czech want to import her. They prefer a president like we have. We chose two presidents here because of the extra empathy, not because of the extra apparatchik in communist time, and not because of the mafia connection. The one before had a mafia connection. So people with more empathy will be the winners. And that includes, of course, more and more women in power. Because it's more natural for women to be empathetic, because culture prepares them more for this. It's their time. They're prepared for empathy for thousands of years, but it was, in patriarchy, it wasn't considered as much. But patriarchy is a zombie. Patriarchy is dead. It's still walking, a walking dead. Patriarchy is over for men and women. It's just not the principle of the future. I'm not talking about the dominance of women. I'm talking about the dominance of the feminine principle in men and women. And because it's time to move on, what is based on patriarchy is just dying fast. And you know what? It's failing. These days, if it's not working economically, it's not working. Well, it's not working economically. The dominance of one person, control of others. Look at them. I read a lot, you know. It just doesn't work. A meeting of people works. A dominance of one over the other. Even women can be dictators, you know. It's over.
Yes, so it's not about like the gender, if someone is man or woman, but about this energy, like how we behave, like
When we were too much to
yes.
one side.
Yes.
So we need to balance. And sometimes balancing means this, you know. So we are still balancing since, I think, the 60s, we're in the act of balancing. And feminism had one generation, second generation, third generation, fourth generation. Feminism is developing. And I think the next level of feminism is men and women have to be feminists because it was like this for too long. Look, here's a picture. The division of men and women did not happen throughout the Constitution. The human bodies are divided men and women. The human energy body is also divided in the opposite way. I've got a female energy body, you've got a male energy body. That's why we're attracted to each other. On the soul level, on the dusha level, it's dualism. Every soul is male and female, and sometimes in fight with each other. But of course, women lifestyle enable them more to express the female dusha, and male lifestyle and tradition enable them more to develop, to express that side. We have harder bodies and all of that. You hold the babies. We sometimes hold the babies. So of course you see more female energy coming from women, more male energy coming from men, but it's not the future. The future is for the women to develop and express the inner man, for men to develop and express the inner woman. On the spiritual level, there was never a division. There was never a division. And as time goes on and we become more individualized, the idea that someone's spirit is essentially different because she's got different set of genitalia will be looked as primitive as a slave trade and flat as theory. Why should people be regarded differently just because they reproduce differently? It is so ridiculous. I hardly have patience for that. I never had patience for that. Also, my mother was strong and my father looked up to her. So that's how I was brought up. My father admired my mother and he looked up to her. He was okay with his manhood. He just admired this woman. And she was so wise. And she was a natural leader and an artist. So I was brought up like that. And I look up to women because they bring something new. Because they were less expressed. Not because what they have to bring is more important. It was just less expressed. So it's its time now. Because if you continue with patriarchy culture, there will be nothing left. In itself, it is destructive. Maybe female principle in itself also will be destructive, but we're a very long way from that. The human spirit is not divided in sexes. It's ridiculous. It's just expressed differently. I think this is what the Germans call Selbstverständlich. You know, it's like, it's not a brainer, not rocket science. Oi, oi, oi. These traditions are hard to change.
So it looks like we have a long journey as humanity to
We've done also
evolve and bring balance and
that's a principle.
becoming adult.
The only permanent thing in human history is the change. Everything else changes apart from the change itself. The change continues. The only constant element is the change itself. A long way to go. But, Slavomira, look how much way we have done. 100 years ago, women didn't have the vote. That's level 1 of feminism. So we just keep changing. And this pressure, because we are behind, this pressure because it becomes more and more costly, more and more damaging and toxic not to change.
Okay, so can you share just one last thought on what we can, I don't know, because I know that you have so much more to share. So
I'm an express man. I've got a full training in psychophonetics. I've got a full training in methodical empathy. I've got 60 students in Slovakia. I can speak about anything from 3 minutes to 3 years, but I'm an express man. I don't have to say everything.
Okay, just one last sentence, something positive and motivating to our audience, just to...
The spiritual world exists. It's a whole world that surrounds us. It is the source of the meaning of our life. And we live in a time when we have to recognize it in ourselves, that we are a part of the spiritual world. It's not a matter of belief. It's not a matter of theory. I don't need to believe that you are here. And our spiritual dimension, in an individual, not in a collective way, is living and burning in us, seeking expression. It's not just in special people, it's in everyone. I took myself around the world, including immigration countries like Australia, South Africa, London. I believe I met the representative element, or I worked physically in 21 countries. And I brought myself to South Africa and stayed there for close to 10 years to test it. Because South Africa, we call it the world in one country. It's a country with 11 official languages. Everybody is there in a social contract, which prevented a disaster. With the most powerful leader of the late part of the 20th century, Nelson Mandela. He's still our hero. Black, white, everything in between, he's our hero. I'm a South African. Late in life, but I'm a South African. And you can meet the world there, all the way from billionaires and members of parliament to simplest orphans in the countryside. I worked with all of them. And the spirit lives in everybody. And the potential for waking up spiritually to our spiritual environment lives in everybody. And our environmental awareness of nature around us is just a beginning. This broader environment around us we are blind to. We are spiritual beings living earthly life. And when we don't wake up to it, when it's time to wake up to it, become destructive. Like if you're a child, you're a child. If you're adolescent, you're adolescent. But if you stay a child in adolescence in your mid-20s, it's a tragedy. When you stay in adolescence in your mid-40s, it's very sad. So we are a little bit behind in our adulthood. Adulthood is taking responsibility. Adulthood means taking responsibility for something. So this development, taking responsibility for the earth, a little bit on the late side. Environmental awareness has to grow. These beings in nature, sure. The earth is a living being. Communities are living beings. These other dimension of spiritual beings supporting us day and night. And it's time to wake up to them. Because it's our time to grow up and take responsibility. We have to be our own angels gradually, Somebody said parents are angels in training. But will we graduate? Will we graduate? So that's my message. We don't have to invent spirit. We don't have to believe in spirit. We have to discover it. We are spirits. That can be born out of people. That can be inspired in people. It's not a new religion. It's just another level of humanity. That's the pregnancy. I train midwives.
Thank you very much.
Pleasure.
Thank you. It was full of deep wisdom, and thank you. And
Pleasure.
I believe that see you the next time, because I know there's so much more to share.
From you too. And it's wonderful to sit in a caravan in country central Slovakia between the mountains to which we drove from West Slovakia. Sitting in this caravan here, it's beautiful for me, and meeting you is beautiful for me, and I will always do that.
Thank you. Bye.
Pleasure.
Thank you too. Bye.
Verím, že tento rozhovor bol pre vás prínosný. A ak sa vám páčil, ocením, keď dáte like, a ak chcete počuť viac takýchto rozhovorov, nech sa páči, prihláste sa na odber. Teším sa na ďalšie stretnutie s vami. Do počutia.